It's on. It's on. Right. Hello. I'm setting up another live stream because this is going to be a free video this week to try and promote the Patreon a little bit. So bear with us a moment. So I'm going to be recording week 7 of the... Right, so I'm recording week 7. I can probably sit down really, can't I? I'm still not quite ready. I don't know why I've started the video so soon. But you know, you get a bit of behind the scenes thing in it. That's the whole point of it. So still need to get the my notes up and that as well. So if someone is watching on YouTube, you might be, fuck knows. Hello. I'm going to be talking about lake monsters, specifically Champ from New York and Vermont, Canada-ish, and Loch Ness Monster for Threshold FM. The episode will be going out tomorrow live at 12 o'clock, but that'll be the edited version of what you're going to see here. Just if you just give us a moment, I'm getting the computer set up. If and when I can remember my passwords. Probably should have had all this ready first, shouldn't I? But fuck it. We're getting there though, we're getting there. Just getting Audacity. So I use Audacity to record them on and edit them on. It's free, so why wouldn't you use it, you know? Right, so no, it's gonna fucking start off with a no matter what I do, it's gonna start off with me balls. And that's on anyway. Fuck me. Trying to get around it all. Has that only just come on? What's going on here? Close this door over. Peace and quiet from Baz. Is this on? It is on. Buzzing, just double checking. So, hello, and Facebook will be ready in just a moment. Fingers crossed my Wi-Fi can cope with it. There we go. So, just do a quick, another quick introduction. I know you've just seen it on YouTube. But, so I'm live streaming week 7 of the Threshold FM show of me recording it. So I'll even angle this a little bit better. So you're not going to get the exact footage that you'll get on Patreon if you're on Facebook, watching on Facebook. But you will if you go to YouTube and watch it. You'll see exactly what people who subscribe to my Patreon get to see each week when I record the radio show and the podcasts. So yeah, I'm going to, might as well show off my notes, eh? If I can find the fucking things. Where are they? I need them regardless. Is that them? Nope. Nope. Let me find my notes. Where the fuck have I put them? Oh, they're behind the computer. In the least useful place possible. Right, hello. I just gotta get Audacity loaded up on the computer and then I'll be starting to record. So, while that's loading up, who's been listening? Because before I start recording, I can talk to you. I can't see yous on YouTube, though, unfortunately, if yous are leaving comments, so I wanted to use the better camera. So it's because it's going to be the permanent upload. Who's been listening to me Threshold FM shows then? Anyone at all? So this is week 7, which means you've got 6 to catch up on if you didn't even know that I was doing these before. You'll find them on the app threshold.fm and you'll find the extended versions for now on my Patreon. And then when I've got 10 episodes, I'm thinking I'm going to start uploading them then as actual podcasts as well to Spotify and that when I can work out how to do that. But I want a nice backlog of them first just in case I get distracted or something and have to miss a week or something like that. Hello? Is this working through here? Is that working? Let's see. Hello? Is this working through? Hello? Where's the sound? Okay. Right then. So we're going to get started then, guys. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to record a little bit of silence at the start because it helps make the audio quality better. Like you can delete like the background noise, which is pretty clever. I can't remember where I've been fucking reading loads, mate, on how to do this better for you. I've even bought myself a little ring light, mate, just to improve these little fucking bits for the 4 or 5 people that are giving me $1 or $3 a month to watch me chat shit and argue with myself because I fuck up and get distracted. So anyway, let's get going because I got stuff. Oh, I was going to show you my notes. This is the most notes I've ever done as well for a show, and it's all on, like I say, lake monsters and fucking like serpents and that mystical serpents. So you got fucking loads of it, mate. Look at this. I've been listening to interviews. I've been reading books, all sorts, mate, all sorts. There's fucking tons of nonsense to get on with. Got a little bit of a script for it, as always, but no doubt that will get fucking distracted and then I'll have to delete like fucking 20 minutes of me rambling on. The computer's just being a cunt, so if you bear with us for a moment. Alright. This is Pause for Thought and I'm the world around you. And on the off chance you're listening back to this on demand, it's currently October. So I figured after gnomes, why not stick with monsters? So this is week 2 of my little monster month. Not so little though this time, like, at least I don't imagine them to be. Anyway, this week it's lake monsters. Gonna take a look at the various ones that I believed in and around the world, the links between them, and well, you know what's going on at this point. I'm gonna link them to stuff that you probably wouldn't think they'd be connected to. Let's get that perfect. Let's start again, fuck it. Start back again. Because the pop shield wasn't where I wanted it to be. How's that sounding, isn't it? Alright. This is Pause for Thought and I'm the world around you. And on the off chance you're listening back to this on demand. Right, that's it. That'll be fine. See, so this is what you don't get to see on the actual radio version. Me messing about, doing, testing things and that. Like, people want to see how you skin a rabbit and that, but Facebook and YouTube don't allow for that, because it'd be gruesome. But I can at least show you how I do this, So we're going to get started now. You alright? This is Pause for Thought, and I'm the world around you. And on the off chance that you're listening back to this on demand, it's currently October when I'm recording it, so I figured after doing gnomes last week, why not stick with monsters for a little while? So this here is going to be week 2 of my little monster month. Not so little though this time. At least I wouldn't imagine them to be little. This week I'm going to talk to you about lake monsters. I say talk to you, I'm going to talk at you about lake monsters. Going to take a look at the various ones that are believed in all around the world and the links between them and other links from them to other things I've discussed in the past, you know. Now, there's a good chance that the only thing linking all these creatures is small towns wanting to have a tourism industry. It could be that inside the world there are thousands of Lapras-like monsters dwelling in the darkest depths of the oceans or under the crust of the earth. Maybe the entrances to the inner earth are all underwater. Maybe they're the remnants of the old world that are spoken about by different tribes and that through history. There are lots of beliefs that link water as well to the destruction of each era. Noah and his ark are the most prominent examples. But could there be life in that water? Was Noah's Ark a submarine that rocketed towards the surface? Is the sky and space simply another ocean above us that will one day pass through or get crushed by, dependent on our preference for facilitating forced sexual encounters amongst wild animals? And did Noah really deserve 950 years of life, or was this more of a punishment for creating the submarine that he made? In a world full of subaquatic creatures, he built a fake one. Could it be argued that the first submarine was developed by Noah? And realistically, does that make him more like an ancient supervillain? If someone today was creating fake versions of living organisms and forcing pairs of smaller creatures into the orifices of said creature before guilt-tripping all these creatures into mating with one another, just in the hope of creating new generations of animals, though inbreeding amongst the newly made brothers and sisters, they'd be considered mental, innit? Like, people would think they were fucking nuts. So even evil, they'd think they were nasty if you were forcing animals to do that, if they did it now. But so you've really got to question what Noah was trying to escape in this submarine transport that he developed back then. The other original humans must have been really fucked up if he thought that this was acceptable to be doing. Or could it be argued that he was actually some form of time traveller? We're still talking about Noah here, innit? Maybe the creatures he quote-unquote saved were previous generations of the animals that he had evolved into this, the massive creatures that people occasionally witness today. Or are the lake monsters the guardians, bred especially by Noah? Or possibly were they jettisoned by Noah and his family in order to get that extra bit of speed, putting that bit of extra distance between Noah and his enemies, not to mention the equivalent of a dinosaur smashing through the pursuer's windscreens. Now, before we get into it all, because already that seems like it was a bit deep to start with, here's a little song. It's off the Heatmaker's latest album with Jim Jones and Joel Ortiz. The album's called Gorilla Glue, and the tune's called Outstanding. Obviously, I'd add the music in there, innit? That's what I do in edit. But what are these saurian subaquatic specimens specific? Well, it varies on where you are in the world, but it seems like everyone agrees that there's some form of reptile, and most believe they have an extended neck or tail, to the point where some illustrations just look like mirrored drawings of other people's illustrations of him, just with the face drawn on the left end of the body, or either way, whether the tail's on the left or the head's on the left, it don't matter. They look the same. And some think that these monsters are snakes, but either way, they measure from around 8 feet to up to 200 foot in length. Now, I think it's safe to assume everyone's heard of a Loch Ness Monster, innit? Everyone knows a Nessie. But what I didn't know was just how prevalent these creatures are all across the world. There's American ones, Canadian ones, European, and least surprisingly as well, there's Japanese monsters. There doesn't seem to be many tales of monster attacks as such, not like there are of like possessions and alien abductions. But something that is weird is that there are multiple stories of UFO sightings around a lot of these bodies of water that these creatures allegedly reside in. Shooting through the sky, lurking above the water, even counts of ghosts and paranormal activity around the bodies of water. Now, I was wondering if there was some reason for all these stories. There's the obvious reasons, like these there's less people kicking about, knocking up. Oh, fucked up there, you know. there's less people kicking about. You know, because there's less people knocking about around on these waterfronts, meaning that there's going to be less electric appliances changing the natural frequencies, meaning there's no sort of, firewall, so to speak, to stop people from encountering the ghosts. But there's other reasons too. I'm going to go into them, and I've got some of my research this week. I've done a fair bit of research this week, and all. I've even read some of a book, a book called "From Out of the Blue: The Early Memoirs of a Sea Monster" by Charles Fort. I've listened to various interviews, like one from a very recent Coast to Coast with monster hunter called Katie Elizabeth, and various websites and all, not just Wikipedia this week. But even Katie herself seemingly admitted an answer to one of my questions, which was, are all these people just pissed up and high whilst they're searching for these monsters and ghosts and stuff? Or are they actually giving all of their undiverted attention to the environment around them? And it turns out that these self-proclaimed monster hunters use these adventures as a bit of a jolly. They drink to enjoy the sunset and each other's company, and probably to loosen themselves up to talk to each other and, to be able to sit in the cold and look for monsters, I guess. And who knows what other toxic substances they're throwing into themselves. Maybe a bit of weed, maybe a bit of speed to get them through the long sleepless nights. Can these people be believed? I'd still say yeah, innit? Because I remember a saying that went a little something like, you can only trust children and drunk people, something like that. They're the only people that'll be honest. I think that pearl of wisdom came from Big Titty Dave. Actually, that day he was loading his van up with his Labrador pups, bags of sweets, and boxes that jangled like they were full of glass. Either way, sound advice for potential sexual predators, but also for life in general. If you want to know the answer to something that's been bothering you, the best thing to do is to ask a drunk person or a kid. There are times that these two groups of people do cross over, but it's probably best not to associate it with like drunk children, innit? Because people will start to ask questions. And you already know that you can't trust the kids to keep quiet, so you just stay away from the pissed ones. But anyway, there's not just UFO sightings and ghosts. There tends to be Sasquatch sightings and all. And why is this? Connie Willis, Coast to Coast host, suggested it may be because there's been lots of death in the area. Maybe that opens a portal of some description. And this would make sense, especially if you believe that 9/11 was something to do with opening a Stargate. There's been tropes in film and media about sacrificing a lot of lives to access other realms, and tribal communities are rumoured to have partook in ritualistic sacrifice. So I thought I'd look back in time a little, following the chemtrail and dinosaur guts left splattered through the time stream from old Noah. I'm going to stick with Nessie for a bit first. And obviously Loch Ness is located in Scotland, like proper northern Scotland. It's a country in Western Europe, which apparently, though, lies on a fault line, a naturally occurring fault line. Now, a fault line is where tectonic plates border one another, believed by many to have special powers and cause extraordinary events on the Earth. And to be fair, they do, innit? Like, you can't argue with that. They do cause extraordinary events like earthquakes and tsunamis, and they can probably make things rise out of the ground from nowhere and all. Another thing that can make things rise unexpectedly is women's tennis. And weirdly enough, there are fault lines in tennis matches and all. So, one of Britain's best tennis players is Scottish. He's called Andy Murray, but he's from Glasgow, which is about 182 miles away from Loch Ness. But the significance of the number 182, according to numerologists, which are very, very different mathematicians, is that it means you're trying to work alongside the so-called source energy. And what if that source energy stems from naturally occurring fault lines? And that's the reason why Mr. Murray had such a successful tennis career. Some would say it's practice, but lots of people practice tennis and they don't get the chance to play at Wimbledon. But to be fair, I don't know very much about tennis at all, or numerology to be truthful, In fact, I actually got Andy Murray's name confused with Andy Hamilton, the darts player. So that shows, what I know about tennis, because I looked at a picture of him and thought, fucking hell, he does well to keep up with tennis in. Not a knock to Andy Hamilton, but, you wouldn't expect him to be playing tennis. It's because he doesn't. Plays darts. Anyway, back to Nessie. Something I know a little bit more about. The loch it calls its home, has been something's home at least for about 4,000 years, and probably longer than that and all. About 4,000 years ago, there was a clan, or at least a group of people that are now referred to as the Picts. A group of people that warred tirelessly with the neighbouring words. Each would travel into each other's lands to try and perform the equivalent of a modern day tagging, like graffiti artists. That's actually where the name comes from. The Picts would leave images on boulders, whereas the words would unsurprisingly write messages on stones, which would then be lost to erosion in time. And until today, very right at this moment, eradicating the words from history entirely. The Picts believed themselves, though, to be descendants of a goddess called Brigid, who Irish Celts also at the same time believed in and referred to as Bridget, which is weird because there's a fair bit of distance between Ireland and northern Scotland, but maybe there used to be a naturally formed path that disappeared to the seas because of tectonic plate shifts. Unfortunately, though, I can't be 100% sure about how they both were of the same goddess. But as far as goddesses go, she was a busy lady, innit? Busy bird, She was looked to for medicine, arts and crafts, cattle and other livestock like sheep and chickens, you're not idiots, what livestock are. Poetry, smithing, sacred wells, and the start of spring. But in Scotland, she had an extra job, an extra role that she was looked to for, and she was the goddess of serpents as well in Scotland, which seems weird that they'd had that in, almost like they knew something about Nessie even back then, 4,000 years ago. After the Christians came and pillaged the locals, raped the kids and farm animals, and killed off all the men in the area, and otherwise spread Christianity to the northern tips of Scotland, they started to propagate the rumours that Brigid was a triple deity, a lot like the Catholic God, with a capital G, because they think there's only one of them, which is weird. You can't deny that. That's weird, because I've always believed that Christianity only believed in one God at all. So to have them admit that there are other deities, but they're just like our God, seems a bit confusing. Like they're saying, yeah, they do exist, but don't give them any mind, don't give them any time, don't bother them. A little bit more reading on the goddess Brigid revealed that she was also the goddess of higher dimensions. And I honestly don't know what to make of that. Like, what would you think that means to say that there's a goddess of higher dimensions that was believed in 4,000 years ago? This information about this, surprisingly, comes from Christian scholars. So for them to agree with parts of what she stands for, yet to say she used to represent higher dimensions, surely seems like a bit of an admission of the existence of higher dimensions in themselves. And now I seem to bring this up every week, but that seems like more evidence that Christians accept the existence of jinn, or the alternative dimensional beings. And I want to point out that this week I really did try to go into this blind. I didn't want to be like, oh, it links to this and this and this. I wanted it to just be based purely off my research, just to see if I could. And with no jokes in mind already written or thought of, or no links in mind, no real plan as to where the episode was going to go towards. You know what? Some of the rings involved in the Venn diagram of lake monsters, it was weird, man, because they're the same as what was in The Little Mermaid, same as what was in The Gnomes, and some of the other episodes I've been doing, and the other stuff I've been researching. Most of the stuff that I say every week as a joke actually does link to lake monsters if you read into it. And there is something else that I say every week. This is Pause for Thought. I'm the world around you, and you're listening to Threshold FM. So I've just paused it a little bit there. I'm going to put another song in here, you see. But how do you think it's going? There you are. I'll take a little break. Sorry, I still can't see what's on YouTube though there, but there's people watching on Facebook, so I've took a break from recording. What are you thinking so far? You have a slug of me brew as well, so that will end up on recording. No, nothing from anyone. Sorry. Back to it, innit? That was Jay Matthews with a song called Monster. Now, getting back into Nessie and that, either Nessie has the powers of an electron and can be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, or they've got an underwater network of lizards that they may be working alongside. And I don't mean that the reptilian humanoid overlords that many people believe in. I mean actual plesiosaurs, plesiosaurs. I don't know how to say it, but it's an actual type of dinosaur supposedly. Aquatic reptiles dating back to millions of years, and unlike the reptilian overlords who cause us nothing but distress and suck our emotions out of our spines, these plesiosaurs could be called pleasurosaurs because they seem to be able to pop up in neglected areas and just inject money into the area. Soft toys, posters, movies, TV shows, fucking monster hunting tours, and booming tourism industries. They just make them appear, these dinosaurs, and all because of a few tribal tall tales. Like I said earlier, they're in Japan, America, and Canada, so you'd think that they'd have different names, something incomprehensible, when written in Arabic letters from Japanese kanji. Maybe something that's easily marketable in America, and something friendly yet slightly Frenchish from the Canadian waters. But you'd be wrong. At least about the Japanese monsters, you fucking bigots, you fucking don't think classes being a bit racist at all, but you'd be bigoted to think, oh, the Japanese will make some monster with a weird name. Now, if anyone knows how to make money out of monsters, it is the Japanese. You got Godzilla, Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, the Kaiju, like Pacific Rim and the comic books and stuff, and probably billions of others. There's at least 1,000 if you just had all the Pokemon and Digimon together. The Japanese variants of the lake monsters have names like Ishi and Kushi, which are fitting names, in it, for the Kuzi and Ezi. But there are fucking loads, mate, loads of these lake monsters. Considering there's no evidence, according to mainstream scientists, other than the countless first-hand reports and accounts of their existence. You would have been right, though, if you'd thought that the Americans would find a way to market their lake monsters. And weirdly, you'd also be right about the Canadian ideas and all, with them sounding somewhat French. One of their monsters is, and we're going to focus on him now. He's called Champ, or formerly fuck off. Or formerly their monsters is, and we're going to focus on him now. He's called Champ, or formerly he's known as the Lake Champlain monster because he resides in Lake Champlain, which is on the border of New York, Vermont, and Canada, southern Canada, obviously southern Canada. There's soft toys and all the other obvious things you'd associate with a tourist trap, and then there's even American sport teams in the area that use Champ as their mascot. What gets weirder, though, is that there are laws in America, in both New York and Vermont, the bordering states of Lake Champlain, that protect Champ from poachers and intentional killings, possibly because of people like the bloke that ran the World Fair that offered 50 grand for the hide of Champ, which sent people to the area looking for an easy bit of money. Imagine like trying to hunt how'd you hunt a dinosaur? No one could even say how to hunt a dinosaur. Like, it'd be fucking hard enough to hunt an anaconda, but if you were to try and hunt a dinosaur in a lake that's fucking huge, if you look at it on a map, I've got it written down somewhere how big it is, but you couldn't sneak up on it. How would you sneak up on a dinosaur? It probably already knows you're there. It's going to be able to smell you. It's massive. It's going to have a huge nose. Fucking impossible. Anyway, seeing as I'm introducing the monster of Lake Champlain, Champ, let's have another song and then we can really get into it. This is R. Ray the Rugged Man with the aptly named The People's Champ. So, where did the Canadians come into it? I can hear you shouting, you can hear you shouting it down my ears. Where are the Canadians involved in all this? And as I said, Lake Champlain backs onto Canada, and Lake Champlain has its modern name because of a French explorer called Samuel de Champlain. But actually, I'm probably butchering that name in it because I'm mank and I can't really pronounce things. But this isn't going to be a geography lesson. This is a cryptozoological lesson. So I don't want to open a can of worms saying that the French discovered Canada, because we all know that that's not true, because there were people knocking about there long before this French bloke had ever rocked up there, so just to set the scene, this lake is about 120 miles long, so that's a lot of coastline in it there. That's at least 240 miles of coastline there, even if it's just a fucking tube as a lake. But it's not a tube as a lake, obviously, it's a naturally formed lake. And for information about Champ itself, I'll be referring now to my notes from Katie Elizabeth's 2020 interview from a few months ago. The lake itself seems to be somewhat of a paranormal hotspot, with ghost sightings, alien sightings, and even Bigfoot sightings. In fact, Katie spent 6 years of her life as a paranormal investigator just hunting ghosts, but has always had an avid interest in champs since the age of 7, and seems to be the world leading authority on the Lake Champlain monster. And I think she admitted that herself in the interview she gave. She believes that it's a dinosaur. Well, one of at least 60 post-prehistoric dinosaurs, with at most another 119 of them knocking about in the waves. Now, I can't remember if she called it a dinosaur or not. I might have added that bit myself, that word, but because realistically, we know that a dinosaur doesn't just mean a massive old lizard. It's a type of lizard from a certain era, and possibly even a certain area. You've got like Cretaceous, Jurassic, and they're not all called dinosaurs, are they? I don't think. But like, if you're listening to week 7 of this, then odds are you've heard some of the other 6, and if you're choosing this bit here to go, oh, that's wrong, then have you really been paying attention to anything I've been saying for the past few weeks? Miss Elizabeth talked about a photo taken by a lady named Sandra Mancy. Now, I've taken a look at this photo, and I'd say it looks more like a giant attempting to swim like an athlete. Is it front crawl, where you swim forward, where you throw your arm over like that and drag yourself through the water? Like I said, I'm not really a big sports guy, but it looks like an arm arching out of the water with the side of the giant's ribs and hip visible. But I guess it's even less likely to be a giant than it is a dinosaur, because there's no proper talk of giants like that in the area, at least not since the French invaded there. There was actually talk of a giant living on a central island at a lake. So could the lake monster actually just be a disfigured giant man, or a giant man that likes to dress up in fancy dress and swim around in the river? Many say that Champ's face resembles a horse, so maybe it's more likely that Champ is actually 2 giants in fancy dress. One is the front end of the horse, obviously, and the other is the rear, though these claims are completely unsubstantiated. Besides, it'd make more sense that the giant would be at the back end, and it'd be a dwarf on the shoulders. Otherwise, where would that saying come from? The dwarf on the shoulders of the giant can see much further than the giant. Well, you can't just make that up, can you? Maybe it came from Lake Champlain. And how would they know where they were going if the dwarf was giving the giant a piggyback in the water? Obviously, it wouldn't be any good for the dwarf. And when I say dwarf, I mean like the mythical being of a dwarf. Obviously, because I'm talking about giants and monsters. The picture itself, getting back to like fact, the picture itself was taken in 1981, and unfortunately, Miss Mancy has since passed away, so she wasn't available for comment on it. But I can't help but wonder if they got their if they got her, for showing people the image of the giant or of the lake monster. They don't want us knowing about the real monster. Even the term monster itself seems somewhat loaded, because if I describe something as gargantuan, you just think, fucking hell, look at this guy. I bet he's good at Scrabble, but shit at parties. Whereas if I say monster, you'll think, oh, this thing must be evil. When realistically, it just means it's a big creature, especially in this case. And just like Loch Ness with the Picts, this North American lake has a history of death and destruction, which is where it probably earned the moniker of Destruction Bay. There was apparently a lot of battles around this area during the American Civil War and earlier with the Revolutionary War, but long before these wars took place, this entire area was a sea, and the lush lands surrounding the waters were home to mastodons, mammoths, and these other elephant species. So we know that there's a history of huge creatures living in the area. Weirder still, there used to be walruses and whales there too, so could the monster be some form of sea mammal that managed to slowly evolve as the water became fresh water, allowing it to grow to a massive size to make use of the waters around it? Maybe the ones with the larger surface area in particular organs were able to extract more oxygen from the surrounding water, whilst other massive watery beasts died off, sinking to the bottom, causing the lake to rise and overflow into the marshes around it. Now, these marshlands seem very useful, as the monster seems to use them as pathways to steal livestock, as many reports of this silvery glistening beast tend to involve it holding a calf or a sheep in its jaws and slithering away back to the water. Should probably, I'll give you a description of the critter in it. The best one I've found is from 1819, and it took place on Thursday, July 22nd. I know it's the specific date because the news story refers to it happening 3 days beforehand. Now, as many other sightings take place in the summer months, which I can presume is because the days are longer, maybe just because the reptilian nature of the beast, meaning it probably hibernates in the winter, like a snake might if it was forced to live in the cold winters of northern New York and southern Canada. It's going to need to hide, and keep warm. The sightings come from a particular captain, sea captain, with a good name, Captain Crumb. Now, after learning that nobody wanted to find him in their beds, he turned to the seas, and he had an encounter of sorts with Champ. He described Champ as 187 feet long with the head of a seahorse, 3 teeth, 2 on the bottom jaw and 1 on the top, eyes the colour of a peeled onion, a dazzling white star on its forehead, and a belt of red around its neck. What's so astonishing about this is he was able to see all of this and give all this detail from 200 foot away in a choppy lake. And it's incredible just how good eyesight was for people before he started putting sugar in everything, isn't it, really? Now, Champ has never been reported to kill anyone. However, it did once hit a stream ship called Eddie and almost caused it to capsize, and it once caused 2 blokes to row out of a cave screaming for their lives. But still, no deaths recorded from it. So, is it really a monster? Could it be more like Barney, and it just wants to hang around with kids? But then again, if you've got something that's quite big and wants to hang around with kids, again, they probably are a monster in one way or another. Besides the point, whilst this sighting itself from Captain Crumb is very detailed, it's worth remembering that the original recorded sighting was in 1609 from Samuel de Champlain himself. But actually, it wasn't. It's a lie, mate. A total lie. It's perpetuated as well by a journalist called Marjorie Lansing Porter, a lady who spent most of her life documenting folk music, but during the times she was writing for papers, she peddled the misinformation that Samuel de Champlain had spotted Champ in the lake. But maybe, maybe it wasn't a lie. It could have been a misunderstanding. In Samuel's journals, he allegedly noted seeing a monster in the St. Lawrence River about 80 kilometres away from the lake itself, which that's worrying alone. Now, this means that Katie might be right about there being more than one of these monsters, but oddly enough, I've read that there were influxes of sightings in the years 1873, 1886 and 1887. I'm not sure why, but what if these things are like salmon, like giant salmon with a penchant for flesh? Maybe they breed in the lake and return every couple 100 years, which to them could be just the equivalent of a year. Maybe they experience time differently. Maybe that's because they're from a different planet or dimension. Earlier, I said these creatures may have evolved into this monster that we now know. But think about it. We currently live at the highest point on Earth that's ever existed. As more water appears, the land gets less. So we're told anyway. So how do these lakes even exist? Why were these lakes at the top of old mountains? Before the water of the oceans appeared, these lakes would have, they would be, some form of the mountain. They'd be the highest points. I've really fucked up there, haven't I? Jesus Christ, what am I on about? I'm supposed to be using a script, innit? Before the water of the oceans appeared, these lakes would have. Before the water of the oceans appeared. These lakes would have been some of the highest points on the planet. So how's there a dent there? I put it to you that these creatures came to Earth on a meteorite, cracked into Earth, dented the surface so hard that they cracked the tectonic plate into several that are currently present today. Microorganisms on these space rocks ended up evolving alone on these mountain tops, which slowly filled with water when the planet was flooded to eradicate the sinners. Maybe. We already know that there are islands with animals that have species that don't exist anywhere else in the world, so why couldn't this happen in a body of water and all? Maybe that's where the original salt of the water came from. Maybe a big salty rock got darted towards the earth, stuck to the surface, buried down, decimating its surroundings, setting fire to everything there, allowing for this lush green life to take over from the barren lands. Maybe this is where all life stems from. Maybe Nessie, Ishi and Champ are a proto-species of Earth, yet no one has ever been able to see them. Now, a lot of skeptics like to say that it'd be impossible for something so big to remain hidden for so long, but I'm pretty sure over the past few years there was a type of elephant that was recently discovered in a jungle somewhere, and there's new species of animals being found constantly. Like a few years ago, there was something called the coelacanth, which another Pokemon reference, looks a lot like Relicanth, and it's like it was thought to have been extinct 60 million years ago, But they've still found that, so why can't they find a fucking dinosaur in a river or in a lake? Saying that they can't see it because it's not been discovered, that seems like a weird way to defend the belief that monsters don't exist. There are animals that have been assigned special attributes because they're so rare, like oarfish, for example, which I've picked on purposely because they resemble some of the serpent-like descriptions, but some people think that oarfish only appear near the end of times, but that can't be real because otherwise how would we know that they exist today? It might be really easy to hide though. There are lots of cave systems around the water's edge of the Lake Champlain. So who's to say that there isn't underwater caves where these creatures live, hunt and die? In the same way a whale will go to a beach to die, maybe these come to the surface to die. Maybe they occasionally reach the surface just to explore, but many may be incapable of coping with the different pressure in the atmosphere around them compared to being deep underwater when they just shoot back down again. Maybe they only breed every couple hundred years, and that's means that there's only ever adolescent monsters every couple hundred years as well. And this is their way of rebelling against the parent monsters, possibly. Katie does believe that they are ectothermic, so the idea of them hibernating or at least sleeping amongst the mud with the alligator turtles isn't out of the question, so that could explain why they're not seen regularly. I was hoping some nutter may have claimed to have fucked the monster, but unfortunately there was nothing that stood out, though I did find a pet name. So there's a pet name for these monsters. The pet name for these monsters is Sammy the snake. Now, Sammy, a serpent creature called Sammy, trying to, just like in Phoenix Nights, mate, does this mean that Peter Kay is a truther? Or is he trying to get us all to ridicule the monsters of the deep by comparing it to a massive inflatable dick? I'll tell you what though, in the 1800s they could have done with a huge inflatable penis because some horses fell through the ice whilst they were harvesting ice blocks to build houses from. Maybe if they'd had it, they could have, floated to safety, or they could have cut it into strips to save the horses from underneath the ice. Like a rope, make a rope out of it. But these horses, they do add credence to the underwater cave theory, as these horses were found miles away from the lake that they fell through, and they resurfaced at Crystal Lake. And Crystal Lake actually has its own stories of a lake monster. Not a machete-wielding mama's boy, but some form of dinosaur creature. And I wonder if that's where the stories of Jason Voorhees comes from. Is it a modern retelling of an ancient story of a monster that seems to live against all odds? Like Jason's like a demon, and he'd come back from the dead. And these monsters, these dinosaurs, have come back from, prehistoric times. Now, there is a chance that these monsters aren't like electrons at all, or, they've mated for life. Some believe them to be parthenogenic, like Godzilla or a Komodo dragon can be. A monster capable of breeding alone, replicating itself, basically cloning itself. Now, what if I've been wrong all these weeks about the cloning facility being inside the moon? What if the moon is there to control the waters of Earth, to keep the cloning facilities flooded, or maybe to keep the water up at the top, to keep the water in the lakes and not sinking underground, transforming the entire world into a giant swamp? I think this is as good a place as any now to take a little break, because I'm speaking a bit fast and that, innit? It's getting a bit weird, so let's have the Here's How. And if you want to be like Katie and have the job of your dreams, then this week's Here's How is just for you. And here's how to land that dream job. Get fired from your current role, but do it in a way that makes you look the hero. Stand up to the workplace bully, prevent corporate fraud, or give a huge discount to a truly worthy customer. Either way, something that you can spin to your advantage, but getting fired will give you the kick up your arse that you're going to need to go and find this new job. Study for your new role. Not just the obvious stuff that you'll need in the job, but study your potential employer too. Learn their hobbies, the partner's name, any mistresses they might have, the pub they frequent, the takeaway they use. You could take it a step further and get a job at their favourite takeaway as a delivery driver so that you can learn where they live. And this would be a great way to learn your potential employer's routines. Keep applying for the job continuously to the point where they already know that letter on their desk is from you before they even open it. Send them your CV. One word at a time in separate Christmas cards. Your potential employer will love that you've took the time to do it, and they'll be impressed that you could afford the postage costs for sending 200 plus cards in the post. proving that you're not just desperate for the money that the job provides, proving that you actually want to do that job. If the owner of a business has got some ugly kids, obviously of legal shagging age, you should do everything you can to become them kids' partners. The employer will be so grateful that their child is fulfilled that they'll want to keep you happy too. Pose as a construction worker with a clipboard and a high-vis jacket. Find your way into their building, and then once you're in the lift, remove the vest to unveil your suit and just go and take a seat in an office and ingratiate yourself amongst the workforce. Buy some magnetic signage saying mobile tyre repair. Rent a van and a generator and compressed air pumps. Then deflate every other car tyre in the office car park. Then park your van in sight of the car park, not in the car park, but in sight, just in the distance a little, and wait in a local cafe. When he inevitably call you to say, come and inflate these tyres for us, you can say how you were thinking of selling your business on, and you've been considering a career in whatever their job is, and ask if there's any openings, because after all, getting a good job is all about knowing people in that job. Everything's about everyone you know. Get an interview the old-fashioned way, by following the process, and then to stand out against your competitors, go full on X Factor with it and start crying and blubbering about your disabled grandma and tell them how you want this job to make your dead granddad proud of you because you can't go back to working in a supermarket. Make sure to actually cry, but not until near the end of it. Maybe set an alarm on your phone before you go into the room with some sad music on it, but put it on silent before you go in. Just leave it playing on repeat. Add a tissue to your pocket, and then just as you begin to tell your tale, remove the tissue from your pocket so you can wipe your eyes. But whilst you're doing that, subtly turn the volume up on your phone to add a bit of ambience to your story. Employers will love to see that you've planned in advance, and everybody's probably got great dead grandparents. So it's easy, even for the most psychopathic. Fuck me. So close to doing it in one go. So it's easy. Probably got great dead. Probably got great. Probably got dead grandparents. So it's going to be easy to empathise with, even for the most psychopathic of CEOs. You could get multiple corporations' logos tattooed onto your body, but make sure that their placement allows you to only display one at any given time. That way, in the interview, you can say, I've always dreamt of working here. Look at this. This was always a reminder to myself. Here's my perfectly healed tattoo of your logo and or mission statement. And that's the end of this week's Here's How. So I've paused it again. Let's have a quick look on Facebook and let's see what people are saying. No, I know a high sugar diet doesn't mash up your eyesight, bro. It's a joke, innit? I'm taking a piss. What's this other bit you say? That could be true, Stephen. Who knows, mate? Who knows? You could be. Feel like I'm neglecting you, the YouTubers, so let's have a look at you guys. What are you saying? Anything? Don't think anyone's even watching on YouTube. Right, let's crack on then. How many more pages do we have? We've got like 2 pages left, guys. 2 pages left, so we're nearing the end now. Seeing as how I'm touching on the Secret Moon facility, I may as well talk about something I found completely unintentionally. We'll start at the beginning of the thread, a little string that you start pulling on the jumper of conspiracy. So I was looking to see what sort of descriptions there were from Native Americans and ancient tellings of Champ, and it turns out there's a lot of history surrounding the so-called horned serpent, a giant snake believed to have crystallized scales with powers over the local game in the area. So maybe, perhaps the moon, it's got a magnetic pull on it, we know that, so perhaps that magnetic pull is actually there to counter the magnetic pull of the horned serpent. The spirit of the horned serpent is believed in all over the world, or at least has been, and it actually represents rainbows and disease as well, the horned serpent, which is worth mentioning, which that is in itself is very 2020. Rainbows all over the place, in it 2020 for the NHS and the whatever else, and there's a virus in the air, so the horned serpent is fucking loving it this year. But it gets weirder. It's believed that this giant horned serpent couldn't be wounded by man unless it was attacked in its seventh ring from its head, as everywhere else was impenetrable except here, which is weirdly where its heart and life energy is supposed to reside. So if you think if it was going to have armour or shield, then it would definitely have it there. But I can't help but wondering as well, by life energy, do they mean that it's stored in the pulmonary gland? Is that what keeps the pulmonary gland going? That little bit in your heart that keeps it pumping regardless, as long as you're alive. I think you may remember me mentioning in other weeks as well that the Nordics had beliefs of a giant snake that encircled the world, but they also believed that there were 7 worlds. So what if these rings are representations of that belief, just watered down and adopted in another part of the world? Another important 7, purely from memory, is I think I once heard that the magician, or the what would you call him? Let's call him a magician, Aleister Crowley, once did a ritual at Loch Ness in the hopes of releasing the 7 kings of hell into the world. Now, I may be wrong. I may be completely wrong. I may have misremembered that entirely, but it's worth looking into. What if these lakes themselves, though, all these lakes where the monsters are, what if these lakes are all portals, but the snake is covered in portals or doorways, a mythical being with actual magical powers, and these lakes, while where the creatures appear, they're just like projections. So the lakes aren't actually there, it's just a hole, but the creature manages to project the lake and the monster onto the lake. You know, the monster that we think resides in these lakes. And maybe the beast itself is the actual earth. I don't know, but these lakes act as windows, possibly, where a sort of hologram of the monster itself can appear. It can't be interacted with, and it probably can't interact with us, but it can be seen. Anyway, we'll get back to actual records. Now, there's lots of records of the horned serpent all around the world, all throughout history, with similar characteristics assigned to it, even as far back as Mesopotamia, which is like ancient Iraq and probably some of the surrounding countries of Iraq. But they had a belief of a fella called Ningishzida, or Ningishzida, I don't know how to pronounce it, but he was the god of vegetation and the underworld, often depicted as a horned serpent. And where this ties everything else together is that this guy was said to be one of the guardians of Anu's palace. Now, Anu was supposed to be the king, the leader of the Anunnaki, the race of ancient aliens that supposedly created humans on Earth. And he was, what else? What else was Anu? What else was Ningishida? A direct descendant of Gilgamesh, a historical figure that many believe now was actually Noah of Noah's Ark. Now, you might not believe in the Anunnaki, but you can't argue with history, and that's exactly what that is there. There's other explanations, though, for them saying the horned serpent was in the water. Maybe it was poor translations from a recently colonised Canada. Maybe speaking pidgin French, or the French misunderstanding the locals when they explain the dangers of the water. There's an island in the lake now known as Split Rock, but now with hindsight, we believe it was known as Rattlesnake Island, and the rattlesnake currently indigenous to the area are called sidewinder rattlesnakes, which, as luck would have it, has a pair of horns on its head. So that could explain some of it away. Maybe the visions of a giant monster could be some form of tulpa, something that was believed in or accepted by many of let's just start again. Fuck me. So that could explain some of it away. Maybe the visions of a giant monster. But now with hindsight, you can tell that I fucking done it again, mate. What am I doing here? Always do that. I'm gonna fucking go to re-record and I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be fucking saying. Where am I up to here? No. Now, with hindsight, we believe it was called Rattlesnake Island, and the rattlesnake that's currently indigenous to the area are the sidewinder rattlesnakes, which, as luck would have it, they've got a pair of horns on them. So, could that explain some of this away? Maybe the visions of the giant monster could be some form of tulpa, something that was believed in or accepted by so many that if you did see something that resembled a monster, then your brain just told you, yeah, mate, that's a fucking monster there. The horns themselves may not be horns at all, though. Many people are actually quoted saying that Champ fired 2 spurts of water simultaneously into the air, like a whale's blowhole could. And why would a whale only have one blowhole anyway? If these creatures are a type of ancient whale that's evolved independently, maybe they used to have 2 blowholes. Maybe all whales used to have 2 blowholes, just like how we've got 2 nostrils. Maybe modern day whales slowly developed a large hole rather than 2 smaller ones. And a question posed here is, if we locked away a few hundred, people, women for a few hundred years, and abducted all of their children and forced all them to breed as well and locked them away, could we force them to transform their nostrils into one solitary hole? After all, we've only ever got one nostril that works at a time, for breathing at least. So what difference would it make to people? There are actually fish that fire water though, and they're known as archer fish. Like, they fire them at leaves to get insects off of them so they can eat. They live in rivers where they're quite competitive for food. So who's to say though that a giant fish couldn't do the same? Besides, a lot of these descriptions are disregarded by so-called experts as pike or gar, a vicious type of fish with lots of teeth, multiple rows of teeth, in fact, like sharks, a gar anyway. So could the description from Captain Crumb be slightly wrong? Maybe he meant that there was 2 rows of teeth and 1 row of teeth on the top and 2 rows of teeth on the bottom, rather than just 2 solitary teeth on the bottom. It's possible, though I don't know how likely. I've looked into gar as well, and they don't grow to 187 feet in length, but they can survive in very little water, and some types even can breathe air itself, the alligator gar specifically. So it's not too much to believe that one could slither its way around the marshland. It's hard to believe a 5-foot fish carrying off a sheep, but if these are the apex predator of the lake with little to no competition, then maybe they've got each other to compete with, meaning that the biggest will pass on its genes because it will kill the others. You give these thousands of years to fuck each other, and there's no real reason why they couldn't become giants of the lake. And I think, guys, that's it. I think that's it for this week. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I just want to teach you stuff. I'm the world around you, and this was Pause for 4 on Threshold FM. And I don't know how much of this song you're going to hear, because at the end we only tend to get half a song out, don't we? But here's a bit of Papoose. This is called Kick Back. I'll see you in a bit. And that's it, guys. That's the recording for the show done. Coming in at 42 minutes this time. Obviously, I'll go back and delete things from it now, and I'll edit it a bit, but I don't know really how much extra footage you're going to get with this, because I tried to do it purely like research and properly writing it out this time. But I'd love to know what you think. I don't mind staying live on Facebook for a little while here to talk to people, but I don't know if there's one person watching. I'm going to go, mate, to be honest. I've got stuff to do. I've got to edit this down and get it sent in before tonight. So I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this on Patreon, thank you for subscribing to my Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go to Patreon, www.patreon.com/worldaroundyou. It's in the description below, or at least I'm hoping it will be at some point. And subscribe, and you can get access to this, the unedited shows, me recording it, fucking 3 copies of my ebooks when I get them edited and done in. There's one currently on there. I'll have little giveaways on there occasionally, I think. I'll be adding little bits to Patreon anyway as time goes by, but if you are watching through Patreon, fucking thank you very much. This one has been free for everyone. It's going to remain on Facebook. It's going to remain on YouTube. It's also going to go on Patreon, so if you go on Patreon, you can see it, and you won't have to be a subscriber to see this one. Let me know what you think. Find the show on threshold.fm. Download the app. Listen to all the other shows that are on there. There's 6 other shows up to now, like The Little Mermaid and Gnomes. What are the others? Fuck me, top of my head. Shrimp. There's an episode on Shrimp. There's an episode on what was his name? Oh, fucking hell. Oh, there's one on the Majestic 12. There's also an episode on Adam Worth. The career criminal. So go and have a look at them, guys. I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for watching. Right, YouTube. Patreon, guys. I'm going to come over now and turn you guys off. There we are. If I can. You'll have to... is it that one? Oh, there are people on YouTube, so I'll answer your YouTube comments, seeing as yeah. Obviously, I can't really do this on Patreon at the minute, but I would like to be able to start doing this on Patreon. I might start trying to live stream through YouTube, through Patreon, and then afterwards I'll answer your comments and questions if you like. So let's have a look. Hopefully people aren't being just fucking, like, calling me a cunt or whatever. Aaron M says, I'm a huge fan. Thank you, Aaron M. That's nice, man. Thank you a lot. You're a huge fan of the fireplace. Yeah, mate. I got the picture of me dad. That's an abominable snowman that I made that my girlfriend grabbed hold of. This is a little carving. I do like stuff like that. What else have we got? So Noah is like a Team Rocket type figure. What a fucking nutter. What, me? I'm the nutter, or Noah is... And yeah, Team Rocket did kind of blast off, didn't they? So Noah might have done for him past, you know. Stephen Hook also says Monster Hunters all smoke spice. Don't know. They could. We don't know, do we? Might be worth investigating, Stephen. Give that a look. Meg wants to know when you're getting viral. I'd fucking love to. That's down to you guys. That's not really up to me. And Stephen Hook wants to know what's your opinion on jinns. And jinns is basically the interdimensional beings, I think, innit? I think they're probably real, mate. To be honest, they seem to be referred to all throughout history and that, don't they? So why wouldn't they be? Right. Well, let me know what you think about them, you know. Anyway, I'm going to go. Go to patreon.com/worldaroundyou if you want to get access to the Patreon. If you want to buy taxidermy, like the abominable snowman with the head made out of a rat scrotum, take yourself to worldaroundyou.com. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in a bit.